We all live with a beast inside us, a snarling, potential fury that most of us spend our lives learning to cage. But there are those who never learn to lock the door, who throw it wide and let the monster take the wheel. This is the story of Setanta, the boy who became a legend, who became the Hound of Ulster, a hero so violent, so warped by the warp spasm of battle, that even the earth itself was afraid of where he stepped. It is a tale from the mists of ancient Ireland, a time when kings were warlords and the boundary between the human and the supernatural was as thin as a veil of smoke. This is the legend of Cú Chulainn, the tragic, fire-wrepped guardian of a doomed age. Long before the High Kings ruled in Tara, the island of Ireland was a patchwork of warring kingdoms, blood-soaked and proud. In the north stood Ulster, a land of harsh beauty and harsher men, ruled by King Conchobar from the hill of Amain Machu. This was the age of the Red Branch, the elite warriors of Ulster, men who tied themselves to their chariots with chains of iron so they could not flee from battle. But even among these giants, there was a prophecy waiting to be fulfilled. A child born of a mortal father and a supernatural mother, a son of Luff, the sun god, who would rise to defend the north before his life burned out like a star falling to earth. They called him Setanta, a boy who did not know the meaning of fear, only the sharp, intoxicating desire to be the strongest. His transformation began not on a battlefield, but at a feast. The blacksmith Cúailnge, a smith of such skill his forge fires could melt the resolve of any man, was hosting a banquet for King Conchobar. The king, arriving late and forgetting his young nephew, invited Cúailnge to release his massive hound to guard the hall. The beast was a nightmare of muscle and fong, a guard dog that had never known defeat. When Setanta arrived later, playing his game of hurling with a comma, in and a silver ball, the hound charged. The sound of the feast died down to a terrified hush. But the boy did not run. He met the beast with a violence that would define his life. He drove his hurling ball, the slitter, down the hound's throat with such force it choked the life from it, then smashed the beast's skull against a stone pillar. The dog was dead, and so was Cúailnge's protection. "You have taken my hound," the smith wept. "Who will guard my house now?" The boy, standing in the blood of the monster, looked up with eyes that were already too old for his face. "I will be your hound," he said. "I will guard you until a better hound is bred." And so, Setanta died, and Cú Chulainn, the Hound of Cúailnge, was born. He grew into a man of terrifying beauty and speed. He trained under the warrior woman Esse Thatch on the Isle of Skye, learning the art of war, and the Gí Balga, a barbed spear that once thrown could not be stopped, and when pulled out it tore the body apart. He returned to Ulster not as a boy, but as a champion, taking his place at the head of the Red Branch. But his glory was bound to his doom. He was a defender, a shield against the tide of the rest of Ireland, and soon the tide came rising. The conflict began with a pillow talk that would decide the fate of nations. Queen Medb of Connacht, a woman as ruthless as she was powerful, sat with her husband, King Ailill, arguing over who possessed the greater wealth. To settle the dispute, they counted their riches. They were equal in everything except for one prize. Ailill owned a magnificent white bull, Finnbennach. Medb had no equal beast. So she sent her messengers to Ulster to borrow the Don Cúailnge, the brown bull of Cooley, the greatest bull in all of Ireland. When the men of Ulster, insulted by the demand, refused, Medb's fury knew no bounds. She raised an army, a massive force drawn from all the corners of Ireland, to march into Ulster and steal the bull by force. But Ulster had a defense. See with Chulainn. The rest of the warriors of Ulster were struck down by a curse, the pangs of the Machu, which left them writhing in bed like women in childbirth, unable to lift a sword. Only See with Cú Chulainn was exempt, for he was not fully of this world, and only he stood between the army of Connacht and the destruction of his people. And then came the single combat. See with Cú Chulainn stood alone at the ford of the river, facing the might of an entire army. He demanded they fight a man by man, champion by champion. It was a standoff that lasted months. Day after day, warrior after warrior came forward to kill the boy, and day after day, See with Cú Chulainn killed them. He fought Ferdiad, his foster brother and the man he loved most in the world, a duel that lasted 3 days. In the end, See with Cú Chulainn had to use the Gíbalga, killing his brother to save his people. But it was during this time that the world saw what See with Cú Chulainn truly was. When a rage took him, he did not fight like a man. He fought like a god of slaughter. The poets called it the Ríastrad, the warp spasm. His body twisted inside his skin. His heels kicked against his shins. His jaw twisted back until it met his ears. One eye retreated into his skull. The other popped out huge and red on his cheek. A spray of black blood rose from his hair like a crown of iron. He became a monster to fight monsters, a howling whirlwind of death that the enemy could not look upon without losing their minds. He held the line at the ford until the men of Ulster recovered, until the battle was joined and Med was driven back. Yet, the gods are jealous of their favorites, and See with Cú Chulainn's life was one long arrow shot into the dark. His fate was sealed not by strength, but by breaking a taboo. He had 3 gisa, or vows. He could not eat the meat of a dog, he could not refuse a meal offered to him, and he could never refuse an invitation from a woman. The fates conspired to trap him in a web of his own honor. He met an old woman cooking a doga meant to be an offering for the godsa, and she offered him a meal. To refuse the hospitality of a poor woman would be a disgrace. To eat the dog would be to violate his sacred vow. He chose the meal. He chose the shame to keep his honor as a host, and in doing so, he stripped himself of his protection. His end came at the gap of the Myrthium, surrounded by enemies. He was sent magic stones to make him bleed, and his charioteer, Leg, was slain. Still, they could not kill him, for he tied himself to a standing stone to die on his feet, sword in hand. It was only when a hooded crow, the Morrigan, the goddess of war and fate whom he had once slighted, landed on his shoulder that they knew his spirit had broken. Only then did a warrior named Lugade strike the final blow, severing the head of the hound. But even in death, See with Cú Chulainn refused to fall. The stone he had tied himself to cracked from the force of his dying rage. He died standing, and it took 3 attempts to knock him over. To the ancient Irish, See with Cú Chulainn was more than a hero. He was a terrifying necessity. He represented the cost of war, the idea that to protect a society, you must unleash a force that is barely controllable. He is the light of youth that burns too bright, the tragic potential of the extraordinary man in a world of mediocrity. He